Yeah, stay prepared for the up and downs. Life is like a seesaw.
What's going on, guys? Just another critic here. Welcome back to the channel. We're getting into my Week 10 college football predictions, starting with the Georgia Bulldogs taking on the Florida Gators. This is a neutral site game. I understand the game is being played in Jacksonville, Florida. Something to keep in mind is that the Bulldogs fan base travels very well, so don't be surprised if it's a 50-50 split or even 60-40 in favor of UGA. Now, with that being said, this matchup is essentially going to decide who plays in the SEC championship game, unless something crazy happens, right? But yeah, like I said, it should decide who ends up playing in the SEC championship game. For those of you betting on this game right now, Georgia 3-4 against the spread, Florida 5-3 against the spread. The number currently sits at 6.5 in favor of Georgia. Over/under is at 44.5. And quickly, let's jump into the stats and then get into my own personal thoughts. Georgia averaging 36 points per game, allowing 10 points per game. Offense is averaging 234 through the air, 236 on the ground. Defense allowing 181 through the air and 85 on the ground. Florida, on the other hand, averaging 32 points per game, allowing 15 points per game. Offense is averaging 277 through the air and 142 on the ground. Defense is allowing 195 through the air and 124 on the ground. And if we quickly take a look at both of these teams' schedules, it's clear to point out that Florida has played the better opponents in Auburn as well as LSU. Defensively this year, they had been playing pretty well on a consistent basis until they, lost Grenard as well as Jabari Zuniga, and that's where their defensive production kind of fell off. We saw that if you look at it statistically in their game versus LSU, they allowed 218 on the ground, nearly 300 through the air, and then South Carolina was able to go for 217 on the ground and 170 through the air. Grenard and Zuniga are expected to play in this matchup, so in theory, we should see that defense get an uptick, right, in production. As far as the offense goes, Kyle Trask has been doing a phenomenal job in really just doing everything that's asked of him. He's made big plays when he's needed to, and he's taking care of the ball, more importantly, right? He hasn't tried to force anything. Overall, he's been one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC, probably behind Tua and Joe Burrow. At the skilled positions, the main names you'll probably be hearing on Saturday would be guys like Van Jefferson, Freddie Swain, and then the big man out at tight end, Kyle Pitts, who's been very dominant in finding some very advantageous matchups, right, with linebackers and whatnot. So they've definitely got the guys at the skill positions, and then LaMichael Pirine, who's kind of been, up and down as far as production goes, but he's always a threat to break a big play. As far as the Georgia defense goes, I think this is probably one of the most talented secondaries in the country, with DBs that can certainly match up with Florida's skilled players. The only thing that I guess should worry Georgia, right, from a defensive standpoint, is their pass rush. They really haven't gotten consistency in the pass rush and really any type of consistent production from those guys as they expected to get from them coming into the season. With that being said, Georgia has still done a good job at limiting opponents through the air as well as on the ground. They've done a very good job at the line of scrimmage on defense. I think it's obvious to note that this is probably going to be the best offense that they've faced up until this point, not only as far as the athletes go that Florida brings to the table, but You've got to keep in mind that Dan Mullen himself is a great offensive mind, and he'll be going up against a great defensive mind in Kirby Smart. So this is going to be a really fun matchup to watch on Saturday. Looking at Georgia offensively, we know what they want to do. They want to run the ball. They want to dominate at the line of scrimmage and essentially turn that into play action pass, right? It's no secret. We know what they got in the backfield. They got a stable of great running backs, DeAndre Swift, Brian Herrien, Zamir White, that they're just going to hit you with the 1-2-3 punch. But the real issue offensively is that they haven't really been able to throw the ball downfield on a consistent basis, right? And I don't think that's an issue with Jake Fromm. I think that's an issue as far as chemistry goes with him and his wide receivers. in reality, he's got a whole new set of wide receivers. Last year, it was Holloman, Mecole Hardman, and Ridley, right? And he had phenomenal chemistry with those guys. So I think that's just something that he hasn't really found with these new set of wide receivers just yet. And really, it's something I talked about at the beginning of the season, right after the Notre Dame game. I noted it because it seemed like Georgia was playing a very conservative game. But when I went back and watched the film, as far as, Jake Fromm's film goes with the set of wide receivers, even before the Notre Dame game, it just seemed like they weren't really, on that same page just yet. I mean, they were finding success, but it was versus lesser opponents, and it was just more so of a athletic advantage that we were seeing more so than good chemistry between wide receiver and quarterback. With all that being said, I think this will be one of the biggest chess matches that we've seen in college football this season, not only because of the matchup between the head coaches, but as well as the matchup as far as style of play goes between both of these teams. As far as how I see this game playing out, I do expect Georgia to find success at the line of scrimmage in their run game. Like I talked about, while Florida is very athletic and speedy on their defensive front, they're sacrificing that for size. And Georgia averaging in at 320 at O-line and Florida sitting around 272. I think they're going to have a tough time in slowing down this run game. Obviously, they're going to have possessions where they do a good job of being able to sell out on the run and stop it, but I don't see that happening for 4 quarters. I expect Jake Fromm to probably have his best game of the season. He's just clutch when it comes to big games. Now, as far as Florida goes, I do like what Kyle Trask has been able to do up until this point. I just think he's going to see some very difficult looks from Kirby Smart. And Kirby Smart has faced some of the best quarterbacks in the country already, so I think he'll do a great job of scheming and preparing for Kyle Trask and throwing some things that Kyle Trask just hasn't seen in his college career up until this point. I do expect this Florida offense to find some success early on in the game, just because I think Georgia is going to have to get caught up with the speed of play as far as playing some of the better athletes that they've seen throughout their season. And so for that reason, I believe majority of the offensive success that we will see from Florida will be in the first half. I think the second half is where we're going to see Georgia ultimately begin to slowly take over this game and really just start to eat up the clock, be dominant at the line of scrimmage, and essentially wear down this Gators team and take them into deep waters that they haven't seen so far up until this point. Florida has had a phenomenal season, and I wouldn't be surprised if they find a way to pull this off. But right now, for all the reasons that I've stated, I've got to go with the Georgia Bulldogs winning this one. My final score, Georgia 27, Florida 20. Once again, my final score, Georgia 27, Florida 20. With that, if you guys agree or disagree, let me know in the comments. If you enjoy the content and whatnot, please support me, like, comment, and subscribe. If not, no worries. With that being said, I'm going to be covering a few other matchups in my college football Week 10 predictions, so look out for those. Appreciate you guys for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Yeah, stay prepared for the up and downs. Life is like a seesaw. Some say it's a bit